news headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Did I miss anything? There were glimmers of hope, weren't there, for embattled Liz Truss earlier after a galvanising turn in PMQs?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
But tonight, her premiership has been left in tatters following the explosive and shocking exit of Suella Braverman and the reportedly imminent resignations of the Chief Whip and her deputy. And with Grant Shapps extraordinarily drafted in as the new Home Secretary.
Jeremy Hunt, I think, has done a great job of settling the issues relating to that mini-budget.
There's no doubt about it. As far as I'm concerned, the anti-democratic, globalist Ramona takeover of our great United Kingdom is on. I've been waiting a while to do this. My dismantling of Shapps, Hunt and the Wets who want to drown the Tory party in a special digest next. Then I'll open the floor to my superstar panel, former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks and broadcaster Ashley James. Plus, why has a coup been allowed to happen in one of the world's greatest democracies? Spiked online editor Tom Slater uncancelled on that at 10:40. At the climax of possibly one of the most chaotic days in Westminster ever, I'm asking, is a genuine Conservative political revolution needed in Britain? And could our very own Nigel Farage be the man to lead it? He reacts to today's events live at 9:40. With Braverman vowing this just 24 hours ago.
It's the Guardian reading, tofu eating, wokerati, dare I say, the anti-growth coalition.
So have we now lost our only chance to stop eco-terrorists and illegal immigrants? Former Tory Minister and political firebrand Anne Widdecombe joins me at 9:50. In the wake of such carnage, should Truss end the Tory misery and just resign now? That's our big debate at 10 p.m. And with the mini-budget blowing up, has Truss Economics killed off low taxes and libertarian policies for good? Sir John Redwood, one of Liz Truss's closest allies for years, is my special guest at 10:20. Plus, is there now only one clear solution for the Tories? Should Boris Johnson return as Prime Minister? I'll get your verdict in the clash at 9:25. Tory grandee David Mallor, former Conservative MEP and chairman of the Freedom Association, David Campbell-Bannerman, and Star Daily Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant are going to duke it out on that too. Plus, after The Crown is slammed for its mistruths about the royal family, are Harry and Meghan the biggest hypocrites to push ahead with their Netflix reality show? I'll bring you that and much more in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Plus, we'll break down how tomorrow's newspapers cover the Parliament pandemonium. And I'll once again crown a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass at 10:50. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Breaking tonight, well, it's Liz Truss's government, because it's collapsing around her, I'm afraid, as the Conservative Chief Whip Wendy Morton and her deputy Craig Whittaker have reportedly written their resignation letters after a parliamentary vote on a fracking ban unleashed more chaos. So the government won the vote a couple of hours ago, but MPs have alleged to reporters that the voting lobbies were marred by blue-on-blue bust-ups as whips allegedly screamed and manhandled hesitant Tory MPs. The PM was reportedly seen storming through the lobbies as her plan to turn the motion into a confidence vote on her leadership backfired and was ditched over fears about the number of rebels. And the Ramona globalist coup that's tearing the Tory party apart, maybe forever, was all but confirmed earlier after the brilliant Suella Braverman was replaced as Home Secretary by the not-so-brilliant Grant Shapps. We're witnessing something quite extraordinary in British politics, folks. I mean, when I went away a week ago, Kwasi Kwarteng was Chancellor, Suella was Home Secretary and Liz Truss was Prime Minister. Now, two of those three things have changed formally, and as for the third, ask anyone near number 10 tonight, and they know it's Jeremy Hunt really running the country. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins me now live from Westminster. Darren, this has been an extraordinary night. It feels like Truss might not be able to go on for another 24 hours. What's the latest? What are you learning tonight?
Yeah, wow, Dan, what a day. I mean, I've covered politics, as have you, for a long time. Even in the worst night of those Brexit problems and debates in Parliament, it never quite got as bad as this. You're right, the UK government is on the verge of collapse tonight. There is little doubt about that. It all seemed relatively calm a little earlier on after PMQs. That was ahead of Suella Braverman resigning as Home Secretary, as you said, replaced by Grant Shapps, someone who, frankly, up until yesterday, had been claiming that the government didn't have very long left to last, a sheer sign of Liz Truss's lack of ability to appoint those that continue to support her. And then tonight, that extraordinary scene in Parliament, as you say, blue on blue action in the lobby, suggestions, though not confirmed, that Wendy Morton, the Chief Whip, essentially shouted at the Prime Minister that she was resigning as MPs were voting. We believe her deputy may well have gone as well. MPs, Conservative MPs, I can tell you tonight, Dan, have got their head in their hands. They are in utter despair about the chaos, the confusion, the sheer ridiculousness of all of this. I think they would laugh it wasn't quite so serious. Where does this go next? Well, as I say, I just don't think Liz Truss now commands any real authority amongst a majority of the Conservative Party. MPs apparently meeting to work out a mechanism of how to get rid of her. It really feels like Liz Truss maybe has days, at most weeks, left in office, if she even gets that far.
Extraordinary scenes. That's Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, live from Westminster. Darren, I know we're hearing no more resignations tonight, but who knows? Maybe the next one will be Liz Truss herself. I'm going to have a special digest on the Ramona globalist coup taking place in just a moment. Then my superstar panel weigh in tonight. Current columnist, former editor of the Daily Star newspaper, Dawn Neeson, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. But before all of that, I feel like I'm saying this a lot at the moment, but on an extraordinary news day, it's Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. An extraordinary news day it has been. The former Transport Minister Grant Shapps has been made Home Secretary following Suella Braverman's surprise resignation this afternoon. In a strongly worded resignation letter to the Prime Minister, Suella Braverman said she was resigning due to a mistake she'd made earlier today when she sent an official document on migration policy from her personal email account, which, she admitted, broke the ministerial code. But being openly critical of the Prime Minister's policies, in the resignation letter, she also said she had serious concerns about the government's commitment to honouring manifesto pledges. In response, Liz Truss says she accepts the resignation, adding it's important the ministerial code is upheld and that cabinet confidentiality is respected. Well, the shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says the government's totally chaotic.
Well, I think the Conservative government seems to be just falling apart at the seams. To appoint and then sack both the Home Secretary and the Chancellor in the space of 6 weeks is totally chaotic. There's obviously been all sorts of disagreements as well as chaos and confusion, and it's just no way to run a government when home affairs, national security and our economy are much more important than this. It's not just a change of Home Secretary we need, it's a change of government.
Well, on top of that, within the last hour, MPs have rejected Labour's motion to ban fracking. Conservatives had been told the motion was to be treated as a confidence motion in Liz Truss's government. Labour MP Chris Bryant has asked the Commons Deputy Speaker to investigate claims of members being physically manhandled and bullied into the lobby as the vote was taking place. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister was in the House of Commons today facing some questions, and she said she was completely committed to the triple lock on pensions. Liz Truss faced jeers from opposition MPs during PMQs as she said she was on the side of working people and she promised to protect the most vulnerable. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, urged her to stand down, asking what the point was of a Prime Minister whose promises didn't even last a week.
only mandate she's ever had is from members opposite. It was a mandate built on fantasy economics, and it ended in disaster. The country's got nothing to show for it except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party. I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone.
Sir Keir Starmer in the House of Commons today. Well, our other story on GBNews today is that the deaths of 45 newborn babies could have been prevented, according to an inquiry which found serious failings at one of England's largest NHS trusts. After reviewing more than 200 cases dating back to 2009, experts concluded that poor care at East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust contributed to the babies' deaths. Some newborns were left with brain damage. The chief executive of East Kent Hospitals, Tracy Fletcher, admitted mistakes had been made and she apologised to the families affected. Now, charities are calling for benefits to be raised in line with inflation, which has returned to a 40-year high. Office for National Statistics figures show inflation rose to 10.1% in September. That's up from 9.9% on the previous month. Higher food prices being to blame for the increase. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio with GB News, where Dan Wootton is back in the seat for Dan Wootton Tonight.
So how the hell did I go away for a week and return with Jeremy Hunt and Grant Shapps running the country? I have to say, what's happened these past few days has been deeply disturbing. An anti-democratic globalist Ramona takeover of our great United Kingdom. A coup to install Chinese sympathiser, zero-COVID zealot and second referendum proponent Jeremy Hunt as de facto Prime Minister was shrugged off by the political establishment, the Blob and the MSM because this is what they've always wanted. Hunt has created the equivalent of Sage for the economy, stacked with Ramona's and George Osborne-backed establishment figures. And tonight, the excellent and brave Suella Braverman, one of the few bold Conservatives left in power who just gave the best performance at the Tory party conference, has been sacked as Home Secretary, replaced by Shapps, another man who, like Hunt, failed spectacularly in his bid to become leader. Such an appointment puts both Brexit and the protection of our borders, already under threat because of the Channel crisis, at serious risk. Who the F voted for any of this? And I have to apologise for my frank language, but my fury over what's happening is off the scale. Certainly not the British public, who handed Boris Johnson an 80-seat majority to get Brexit done. Certainly not the Conservative Party members, who handed a massive mandate to Liz Truss to keep globalist fishy Rishi Sunak out of Downing Street. Not even wet Tory MPs wanted Hunt or Shapps anywhere near power. However, since 2016, destructive dark forces have conspired to undermine the biggest democratic mandate in British history, before cynically using the COVID-19 pandemic to hand over even more power to the likes of the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. If you think any of these folk want an independent UK to genuinely thrive, then I'm afraid the last few months has provided ample evidence you were so very wrong. If we're not careful and allow this madness to continue, it's not going to be long before Ramona and Chief Keir Starmer marches us back into the EU, coupled with further uncontrolled immigration and a total defeat in the war on woke. Of course, the MSM is also part of the plot to undermine democracy. Why the hell do you think they went so hard to depose Boris from office over the most minor of indiscretions? That's why I was one of the only people in the media to insist his departure from number 10 would be a disastrous thing for Britain. And then why I was one of the only people in the media to actively campaign against Sunak during the painful and totally unnecessary leadership contest that followed. But as I sit here tonight, with the media and political establishment revelling in the fact that I've effectively brought down Truss too, I'm very worried to say my predictions these past few months have already been proven correct. It does seem like they'd rather tear their party apart and the country by risking a disastrous Labour, SNP, Lib Dem coalition than backing Boris Johnson, the man who delivered a landslide majority in 2019 to secure Brexit. The Westminster psychodrama over Boris Johnson has to end, or this country will be handed over to the nightmare of a Labour, Lib Dem, SNP Green coalition from hell. Only a Tory party united around the Prime Minister can stop the prospect of Tony Blair wielding outsized influence on the future of Britain. The country now faces up to 3 months of chaos as the Tory party elect a new leader. Again, that's exactly what Boris critics want as they plan to usher in a Labour, Lib Dem, SNP coalition from hell that would put both Brexit and the Union under serious threat. My concern is that in the rush to force a democratically elected PM out of number 10 as soon as humanly possible, all of this is moving just too damn fast. Of course, there's a reason for that. The faster Tory MPs have to choose, the more chance there is of 2 candidates being selected who are acceptable to the grandees and the blob rather than the people. The media is in the tank for Sunak. So be certain there's going to be hit job after hit job on Truss over the next 6 weeks. And if she becomes Prime Minister, they will attempt to destroy her just like they succeeded with Boris. Just like with the lengthy COVID lockdowns, which the same people forced upon Boris Johnson, they've won again. And now they'll continue demanding concessions, resulting in political inertia for the next 2 years. Well, let's be honest. It's going to take far less than 2 years for this mess to all come crashing down. More like 2 hours at this rate. But after all, that snake Michael Gove said yesterday, the PM's job is now a, quote, job share between Jeremy Hunt and the bond markets. Well, to hell with that. I supported Liz Truss because she pledged to stand up to those dark forces by challenging the orthodoxy and not giving in to campaigns by the blob and the MSM. So shame on her for throwing Kwarteng and Braverman under the bus and letting the wets in her party undermine democracy. To respond now, my superstar panel, former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Dawn Neeson, look, there's so much going on at Westminster tonight. It looks like the government is literally hours away from collapse. Now, if you'd asked me a week ago, I would have said that's a very bad thing. Actually, given it now seems that Hunt and Shapps and some sort of Ramona blob are running the government, maybe actually we need this to happen.
What do we need to happen? Do we need a general election?
I'm heading towards thinking that, yes.
And that would be, I think, the end of the Conservative Party for potentially a generation. I think, because they're not going to get in. I think Labour are, 36, 37 points ahead now? I can't keep up. So much has changed over the past, literally, hour. As soon as you walk away from your phone or the TV or the radio, everything changes again. It's been quite astonishing. In 36 years of journalism, I've never witnessed a meltdown like this in politics. I don't ever remember feeling as, and I'm sure people out there are feeling the same, as confused and depressed about where we're going now, Dan. Previously, you could see an answer, you could see a way out. I can't actually, been racking my brains all day, work out where we go from here. I think I'd never thought Liz Truss was the right woman for the job. I think you had the rock and hard place of her, Rishi Sunak. I don't know who is the answer that's left in the party. I mean, that cabinet is falling apart, faster than something from IKEA that I'd put together. I honestly am at a loss as to say what's going to happen. I mean, with the general election scenario, I don't even understand the mechanics now that could get a general election to happen. That's not that easy. That's not an easy path forward either. The only thing I do know is that Liz Truss has to go, and I think she'll be gone probably just before Halloween.
Well, my mind's blown by much tonight, but especially the fact that you started in journalism, Dawn, as a 5-year-old. Adam Brooks, can you believe what we're seeing? I mean, we literally supported Truss to avoid these globalist Ramonas taking power. And I think Dawn's right. It wasn't necessarily the choice we wanted. I was very keen on Braverman, considered Kemi Badenoch, although was equally concerned about the influence of Michael Gove on her. Yeah. But we voted Truss to keep the likes of Hunt and Shapps away from power. They're now running the country.
It's now the worst nightmare many of us could ever have foresee, Jeremy Hunt is probably my least favourite politician ever.
It's a tough field. It's a tough field.
He petrifies me. And if I was forced to vote tomorrow, I'd rather vote for Starmer than Hunt. And that's saying something. Some of my biggest tweets I've ever done, I've been on Twitter a long time, are when I mention Jeremy Hunt. He's hated by the electorate, by the members, by the left. This man, I think he's a dangerous man. His COVID authoritarianism petrifies me.
We wanted to lock Brits up in our homes. Also, you're obviously a big Brexiteer, Adam.
Yeah.
And he proposed a second referendum and proposed signing us up to the
everything is at risk now. I think all the people...
Doesn't believe in democracy.
Everyone that's now being installed around, government were Remainers. And it just makes you wonder whether they've been having meetings with the EU. This coup, how deep does it go?
Well, Hunt was in Brussels, wasn't he, when he got the news? Now, look, he may well have just been on
who goes on holiday to Belgium?
Well,
Come on.
Exactly.
It's like
Dan,
certainly wouldn't go on holiday.
I did a poll yesterday, a Twitter poll, 11,000 votes in 24 hours. 5% said they trusted Jeremy Hunt.
Oh, yeah, you can trust
5%.
as far as you can throw him. Actually, James, Liz Truss should never have U-turned, should she? Because the moment she U-turned on the 45p top tax rate, they knew they had her. And they tried to force her into that U-turn. But actually, if she'd held firm and just said, look, I'm sticking to the policy, but I'm going to deliver this full economic statement, then I think she would have shown she had a position of strength. They got her the moment she U-turned.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that she's been U-turning ever since, but also there seems to be no constant communication between her party. Even today, her guaranteeing that she's not going to change the triple lock in pensions, but her Chancellor saying the complete opposite a couple of days ago. And, by the way, I would say this, whatever colour party was in power, the government is in total meltdown. They're voting against their own manifesto that they were voted in on. And also, like you said, who is in charge? No. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor. I don't think anyone likes Jeremy Hunt. As you said, the left certainly doesn't like Jeremy Hunt either, especially after what he did to the NHS. But sources are also saying that Braverman was sacked at the behest of Jeremy Hunt. Also, Grant Shapps, the man now in charge of law and order and security, is the man who used a fake name and ran a get rich quick scheme. I think we're a laughing stock, and you have somebody like Vladimir Putin in the shadows. It's like really serious things. 1 in 7 people skipping meals, going without food.
Of course. But it was the Wets and the Tory party who conspired to get rid of Boris Johnson and subvert democracy. You wanted Boris out.
Yeah, I did, because
and you wanted Boris out to cause chaos. No, and look at what you've now got. Boris Johnson should never have been deposed.
I don't want chaos. Boris Johnson is responsible for his own undoing, and with Boris Johnson, because of his behaviour...
Because he had a piece of cake.
Because of his behaviours...
We're in this mess because of that.
There wasn't just Partygate. There were various scandals, and it meant that we weren't focusing on the cost of living crisis, things that the public are genuinely afraid of.
You've got what you wanted. You've got what you wanted.
Haven't.
You came on here for weeks and months and you wanted to subvert democracy.
But also,
you wanted Boris
let me
gone.
remind you that
Look
Rishi Sunak did warn that this would happen with Liz Truss's economic plan. So this isn't like, I'm not sat here proud. Like I said, if this was a Labour government, I'd be criticising the Labour government. Yeah. What I want is stability. We are an international laughingstock, but also people are scared.
All I'll say, actually, I agree with everything you say about where we're at today. But what I don't agree with is you now saying, we want stability, because you were the one coming on the sofa week after week lobbying for our democratically elected Prime Minister with a majority of 80 seats to be deposed.
It was
because
not
he
just
had
me,
a
and it
piece
wasn't
of cake.
about
It wasn't.
cake.
It was
there
all of you. And actually, I want to speak about the MSM
issues.
quickly too, guys. I want to speak about the MSM quickly because today, Channel 4's lefty lead presenter, Christian Guru Murthy, has confirmed his blatant bias after he was caught delivering a foul-mouthed outburst about Minister Steve Baker following one of those yelled-out interviews with the Tory MP outside Downing Street. This is extraordinary. I really want to show it to you. Watch.
Thanks a lot, Steve. It wasn't a stupid question, Steve. You know it. I'm very happy to go up against you on Truss any day. What a...
Now, he used the C word then. This is the guy who claims he is a non-biased, impartial presenter. What does he mean? Go up against you regarding Truss. Anyway, he's had to apologise tonight, probably to keep his job. After a robust interview with Steve Baker, MPO used a very offensive word in an unguarded moment off air. While it was not broadcast, that word in any context is beneath the standards I set myself, and I apologise unreservedly. I've reached out to Steve Baker to stay. Sorry. Just a final word on this.
I think the dirtiest C word is definitely conservative at the moment. It wasn't that word that he used.
Oh, come on. It's only a dirty word because they're going against the values of conservatism. But Adam Brooks, final word on this from you. It shows, doesn't it, how the MSM actually have also been actively campaigning against...
Of course. We know that the most of the mainstream media is Remainer-led. They've got what they want.
How can you say that when you have, like, the Daily Mail being, like, the biggest newspaper? You can't say that that's been Remainer at all.
Can I just say, the Daily Mail is one of the few honourable exceptions in this industry. I'd put the Daily Telegraph...
Speaking as member of the mainstream media, I
GBNews
profoundly disagree with this statement. I think the Daily Mail and the Sun both backed around Brexit, both backed
yeah, but I'm
Liz
talking
Truss
about the
in
broadcast media here.
Splitting hairs, but I resent the fact that all journalists are being portrayed as being anti-democracy.
And it is a very dangerous place to go as well.
Well, it's very dangerous, isn't it, to call a minister the C word because he didn't agree.
To be honest with you, if you did a poll now asking the viewers and the listeners to this show the one word they would use to describe pretty much all politicians at the moment, that would be the close word to it.
Don Nixon, Adam Brooks, Ashley James, thank you so much, my superstar. Panel there with me all night, but coming up, as the Tory party descends into civil war, do other right-wing parties need to come together for a Conservative political revolution? Our very own Nigel Farage, who knows a thing or two about uniting the right, joins me shortly. But up next in The Clash, is it time to bring back Bojo to save the Tories from themselves? Here to battle it out, Tory grandee David Mallard, chairman of the Freedom Association David Campbell-Bannerman, and star Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant. Want to know what you think as well? Email me down at gbnews.uk, tweet me using the handle at gbnews. Our poll running there too. The results coming up after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Time now for The Clash. Now, Suella Braverman's resignation as Home Secretary has plunged the Conservative Party into further chaos, begging the question whether it was really worth getting rid of Boris Johnson over a slice of cake. I've always made my position with you clear on this, and if a recent YouGov poll of party members is anything to go by, Bojo could be back in number 10 sooner rather than later. 32% of card-carrying Conservatives want Boris to succeed Truss if she resigns, nearly 10% more than Fishy Rishi in second place. So could figures like that entice the former PM back into power? As his most loyal supporter, Nadine Dorries, pointed out in a tweet, Boris is the only MP with a mandate not just from party members, but from the British people. So is it time Boris bounced back into number 10? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBnews while you're there. You can go and vote in our poll too. The results shortly. I'm very fascinated to find out what they are. But to debate this, Tory grandee, the former Cabinet Minister David Mallett, the Star Daily Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant, and Chairman of the Freedom Association David Campbell-Bannerman, who has been leading the campaign to bring back Boris ever since he was undemocratically deposed as PM. So, David Campbell-Bannerman, is it time now for the party to admit what you and I have been saying for a long time? It was a mistake to depose Boris Johnson.
Dan, I think you're right. Clearly, it was a huge mistake. I mean, if you just look at it in polling terms, just after Partygate, we are 4% behind. When they got rid of Boris, it went down to 14%, and now it's 36%. I mean, it has been a disaster to get rid of him. I think we can bring back Boris, and if they push Liz Truss aside, and they're trying to do that, I think you're right, their dark forces at work, it's a corporatist plot. We can bring Boris back. There are a couple of impediments. The MPs have to back him properly. And there's the Privileges Committee, which is a jumped-up kangaroo court trying to bring him down. If you can get round that, Boris can be back, and I think it can make all the difference. Otherwise, we face annihilation.
David Mallett, would you now concede it was a big mistake that you lobbied so hard for Boris to go, folk like you?
No, I don't actually. I think the big mistake was electing Liz Truss. But look, there's only one person responsible for Boris's demise, and that was Boris. Boris could have been a very effective prime minister if he'd been built that way. And it wasn't just him eating cake. I mean, it's a lovely thought. You know, let them eat cake, said Marie Antoinette. Boris ate his cake. But you know, it was the mess up over, for instance, the deputy chief whip and his inability to deal effectively with that. It was Boris's not being able to lead a government that was capable of getting through a legislative programme, because Boris is a bit of a shambles. You know, he makes a jolly good speech, but he's a bit of a shambles. And the reality is Boris made his downfall inevitable. And I don't see any evidence that if Boris came back, he'd be any better or any different. But I have to tell you, I have never, ever in my life, and I joined the Conservative Party 57 years ago, but I tell you, I'm just disgusted by the way things are at the moment. Disgusted. But that doesn't mean I think that Boris is perfect. You know, he isn't.
No, and I want to talk to you a bit more, David, actually, about what we've seen tonight in Westminster in just a moment. But before I do that, let me bring the Daily Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant. And Madeline, isn't one of the key questions, I guess, whether Boris would even want to return now? I mean, he certainly didn't want to go, but could even Boris turn this around? Because it's looking like the Titanic at the moment, heading towards the iceberg.
No, I don't really see. I mean, if I were Boris, I'm very much not Boris, but if I were Boris, I'm not really sure what the incentive would be. I mean, obviously, as I'm sure you will be discussing exhaustively tonight, the state of the Conservative Party, as David said, is quite unlike anything in recent or any history, really, of the Conservative Party in the last few decades. And I just had to ask, I mean, you know, what would induce Boris to even want to come back after being in the thick of it for some incredibly tumultuous periods of British history, having to deal with a level of personal political chaos that is, you know, totally unprecedented. And now he's finally away from all of that. and also crucially in a position to actually be able to make a lot of money, which has been a real problem for him in the last few years, not having enough money to fund his lifestyle. If Theresa May can rake in millions from giving after dinner speeches, you can be damn sure that Boris Johnson will be able to do that and then some. And I imagine that, you know, he's got a young family. He's been through a lot of chaos recently. And why would you want to jump in and take over the Conservative Party at a time like now? I mean, I don't doubt that Boris might want to make a reappearance at some point to be the kind of, maybe like Grover Cleveland in the US in the 1880s, he could come back and do a non-consecutive term. But I don't really see why anybody would want to take up this poison chalice right now.
You're right. Now, David, look, I was sensing from you, David Malladis, I was sensing from you a real anger and emotion, and that's a feeling that many Tory grandees have tonight. I want to play you this clip from the BBC earlier. This is the backbencher, Charles Walker, who has gone viral tonight for his visceral reaction to what is happening to your party. Watch.
Do you think there's any coming back from this?
I don't think so. But I haven't. I have to say I've been of that view really since two weeks ago. This is an absolute disgrace. As a Tory MP of 17 years, who's never been a minister, who's got on with it loyally most of the time, I think it's a shambles and a disgrace. I think it is utterly appalling.
David Mallow, your reaction
to that? Well, I feel his pain. I feel his pain. You know, I think all of us feel pain about this. I mean, when you think, for instance, John Major's period in office was marred by the ERM, but John Major then, with Kenneth Clarke at the Treasury, they turned the British economy round, and by the time we got to the 97 election, the British economy was in great shape, but it didn't save the Tories because the public by then had delivered their verdict on the Tories, and the Conservatives lost more than half their seats, including mine. But I mean, I never felt we were a total shambles, but I think that what's happened here, I mean, they can't. I personally was rather a fan of Suella Braverman. What on earth is she doing sending a privileged document out on a normal email? It's like some of these people, they have their careers in 10 minutes. You know, they get elected to the House of Commons in the morning and they're Home Secretary in the afternoon and they're out on their backside in the evening. You know, these are big jobs. When I was a Home Office Minister for 5 years, I served people like Willie Whitelaw, people who were actually big people. They wouldn't make childish mistakes like that. And I think the tragedy for the Conservative Party is that not only are they going to lose the next election because there just isn't enough time even for a proper administration to turn things around, but I think the Tories could be humiliated in a way that we have not contemplated in many, many decades. And there's no point in us blaming Boris for that. You know, Boris had strengths. He could win elections. Boris had limitations. He couldn't really then govern effectively. But this woman, I mean, this woman is simply dreadful. And the people she surrounds herself with are incompetent. I mean, I think one day someone's going to pinch me and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to find it was all a really bad dream, you know?
David Campbell-Bannerman, though, is that entirely fair, what Mr. Mallow is saying here? Because you have to admit, David, we know there were dark, nefarious forces that were partly behind Boris going, and those same forces, David Campbell-Bannerman, immediately turned their focus on Liz Truss. They wanted to destroy her. They didn't even give her a chance.
Well, I agree with that, Dan. I think Rishi was their man. And of course, he's a banker, he's a globalist, corporatist. He's in that world. And that's what they wanted. This is part of a far bigger picture. I just don't believe, these dark forces are there. It's not a conspiracy theory. The World Economic Forum is behind a lot of this. And, what's the game plan? Well, they don't like low taxes. They don't like democracy. And they are exerting their power. And some of these people coming in, actually, their true loyalties to the European Union and to this corporatist setup. and not to their own country.
No, very good point.
I do feel the pain of David. It has been a shambles, but I think it's part of a far bigger game than Liz Truss.
There's a bigger problem going on. Madeline, just final word to you. Sorry, Madeline, I just want to give the final word to you. What are you hearing? What do you think is going to happen, Madeline? Is there a chance that Truss goes tomorrow?
I really think that it's end game time now. I think Truss could go at any point. The signals and noises that I'm hearing are wall-to-wall despair and a sense of, I think, a real sense of shock that this has all imploded so quickly. But no, it's absolutely negative reviews all round. I think that really we're in the very end stages of the Truss administration now. And if anything, the one thing that keeps Truss in power a little bit longer is the inability of MPs to agree on a replacement.
Yeah. And reportedly meetings already going on with the chair of the 1922 committee. Madeline Grant, Star Daily Telegraph columnist, former Tory Minister David Muller, and chairman of the Freedom Association, former Tory MEP David Campbell-Bannerman. Thank you all. That was a really fascinating discussion. So who did you agree with there? Should Boris Johnson return as Prime Minister? Sean on Twitter says, I would love him back. Unfortunately, it won't happen. From Laura, good Lord, no. Let's have Kemi Badenoch instead. And from Carol on the email, yes, bring back Boris. His crimes, in inverted commas there, fade into oblivion comparison to what's going on now. And your verdict is in. This is close, actually. Fascinating stuff. 52% of you agree that Boris should return as PM. 48% of you say they shouldn't. Very appropriate numbers, actually, for one of the men who delivered Brexit. Coming up, though, as one of the last Thatcherites in Cabinet makes an explosive exit, was ex-Home Secretary Suella Braverman our only chance to stop eco-activists and illegal migrants. Former Tory Minister, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe joins me live at 9:50. But first, does Britain now need a genuine Conservative political revolution? And could our very own Nigel Farage be the man to lead it? He reacts to today's extraordinary developments in Westminster live straight after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So what the Farage time now, and the Globalist and Remainer, Grant Shapps, has replaced Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, and he immediately revealed exactly where his loyalties lie.
Except that the government has obviously had a very difficult period. As Jeremy Hunt said when he was appointed on Friday, that nonetheless means it's doubly important to ensure that we are doing absolutely everything in the basic areas. Jeremy Hunt, I think, has done a great job of settling the issues relating to that mini-budget.
I mean, Nigel Farage, look, it is an extraordinary night, right? So much going on at Westminster. I was gripped to your show earlier when you were covering it all live. But fascinating there, you've got one Ramona in Shapps talking about another Ramona in Hunt, who, of course, proposed a second referendum. No reference there at all to the woman who is meant to be our Prime Minister. This is a coup, isn't it, Nigel?
Oh, absolutely. It's a globalist coup. Jeremy Hunt is now the president of the United Kingdom. Truss is irrelevant. Whether she stays or goes tomorrow is completely irrelevant. Hunt has been chosen. And I'd love to know who spoke to Liz Truss and told her that Hunt had to have this top job, whether it was the IMF, the White House, the German Chancellor, all of them. It's perfectly clear they're all delighted that he's there. And what you saw today was the Hunt reshuffle, getting rid of Suella Braverman, who dared to say that legal and illegal immigration was running at too high a level. It is a complete and utter disaster. And in comes Grant Shapps, And this is the first. Well, they planned this to be the first of many. This is a globalist coup. It is a Remainer coup. The Conservative Party is now showing its true colours. Politically, it never, ever believed in Brexit. It really genuinely didn't. And secondly, from their behaviour tonight, what you're seeing is a bunch of low-grade social misfits. And they've been this for a very, very long time. I spent 21 years, Dan, commuting back and forth to Brussels and Strasbourg, working with these people. Many of them are now MPs, members of the House of Lords. One of them's even in the cabinet. And I have to tell you, they are the most self-centred, selfish people I've ever met in my life. They're in politics, not for their beliefs, not for what they can do for the country. They're in it for their own ghastly little careers. And I honestly believe, even though it's been 200 years that the party's been around, and arguably the most successful political party and movement the Western world's ever seen, I honestly believe the moment has come now for us to recognise that the Conservative Party, for those of us that believe in conservative values, and by which I mean the small state, entrepreneurship, all of those things, this party is now dead and it needs to be replaced.
OK, so Nigel, assume that is correct, then there has to be some sort of revolution on the right of British politics. And of course, Nigel, you are the one man who all week people are saying, well, unless Farage gets involved, it's pointless because there's no figurehead. And look, there's some great people on the right, and we love a lot of these people, Nigel. Your colleague Richard Tice, who took over the Reform Party, a great man. We have Lawrence Fox, who, of course, was filling in for you a couple of weeks ago, head of the Reclaim Party. But there's no one leading this movement. Nigel, are you prepared to do it? Are you prepared to return to frontline politics?
Well, look, I led two very major, and I would argue, albeit it took a long time, but two very successful insurgencies. The first was UKIP, the second was the Brexit Party. I got rid of David Cameron, I got rid of Theresa May. I'm quite proud of that, really. However, that was around, well, you can call it a single issue, but a fundamental issue. And also, I had proportional, representational European elections in which I could win, and by doing that, change the agenda. But you're also looking, Dan, at the man who got 4 million votes and 1 seat in the 2015 general election. What is clear to me, if we're going to replace this Conservative Party, if we're going to build a new centre-right movement that believes in the individual as opposed to the big corporate, that believes in national security as opposed to just-in-time supply chains and all of those things, what is clear to me is I absolutely could not do that on my own. It would need, several major figures to recognise the Conservative Party is dead. Now, whether a Suella Braverman or others like that have got the courage to strike out and do this? I don't know. When the SDP launched in 81, and goodness me, they came within a whisker in 83 of replacing the Labour Party. They didn't, but they got Tony Blair, so they kind of won. There were 4 major former cabinet ministers that set that up. So we need to replace the Conservative Party. We need something that is sincere, that is genuine, that is not, as they all are now, centre-ground Social Democrats. I can't do that on my own, but if there are other major figures that want this to happen, if there are major media organisations that want this to happen, then it can, but I can't do it on my own.
OK, so your message to Suella Braverman tonight, for example, Nigel, would be, what? Don't stick with the Conservatives. Come and do something with me.
My message to all of those people who genuinely believe in a small state, in free market capitalism, in looking after the concept of the nation, would be to listen to the words of Charles Walker tonight. He put it absolutely beautifully. You could see the anger that was boiling within him. But people like Charles Walker are now rare in politics. He's in politics because of what he thinks he can achieve, as opposed to Charles Walker himself climbing the greasy pole. This party is in the grip of low-grade careerists. It has no future. And I'm calling on people to have the courage and the vision to rise above it. And if we can get a gang together of people, we can make this happen. On his own, Nigel Farage could fight a very, very brave rearguard action. I'm sure I can get millions of votes. I'm sure I could do that. But we need more than that. We need more than that. We need to be able to smash the first past the post system. I can't do that on my own. If there are others out there that want to work with me, that have got that vision, then it can be done.
Have you spoken to any disaffected Tories who were cabinet ministers yet?
Dan, if I had, I wouldn't tell you at this stage. So, but look, of course, I have some close relationships with people in the Conservative Party, people who were in the trenches with me during the Brexit campaign and beyond. The slight problem is they all feel that they owe so much allegiance to the party itself that none of them would have been in politics without the party. And they now need to recognise that party is done. I thought David Mellor, his response to you was very interesting a moment ago. I mean, there's a man who's been, in the Conservative Party a lot longer than you've been alive. And he's held very senior positions. He's been through the ups and downs of politics more than most people. But David is genuinely conservative in his thoughts, his philosophies. And I could tell listening to him, he's pretty much at the end of his tether with the whole organisation. So we have to be able to create something that is grounded, that has a deep philosophy, has a conscience, and is made up of people who want to do this, I'm going to quote Sir Charles Walker, who want to do this for the country as opposed for their own little grubby careers. So I'm not saying there's no cert that it is going to happen, but for the first time ever, there is the opportunity, not just for a political insurgency, which I did so well, or so badly, depending on your point of view, but now there's an opportunity to create something completely fresh and brand new. And, it may well be that the election after next is contested under proportional representation anyway. And that would, of course, kill off the Conservative Party as we know it forever. What has happened over the course of the whole of 2022 is a complete and utter disgrace. We have been reduced to a laughingstock all over the world. I'm busy doing Australian TV, American TV, and they all look at the mother country now with some sense of disbelief. And that is down to this political party, the low-grade actors within it, and nothing else.
Nigel Farage, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. And of course, Nigel, back live at 7 o'clock. Will Liz Truss still be Prime Minister by then? Who knows? Coming up, is it time for her to just throw in the towel and resign? My superstar panel will return to debate that in the media buzz after 10. But first, as the Home Secretary's bombshell exit from Cabinet sparks turmoil in Westminster, was Suella Braverman our last chance to secure our borders and stop the eco-activists sparking havoc across Britain? Former Tory Minister, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe, she's live with me next.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So just 24 hours ago, Suella Braverman was looking like the Home Secretary we've all been waiting for as she launched this brilliant attack on all the Liberal lefties who've been facilitating eco-terrorism and preventing the country from getting a grip on the illegal migrant crisis.
And the British people would not have been put through this grief today. So yes, I'm afraid, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's the Labour Party, it's the Lib Dems, it's the coalition of chaos, it's the Guardian reading, tofu eating, wokerati, dare I say, the anti-growth coalition that we have to thank for the disruption that we are seeing on our roads today.
But tonight, she's gone, finding herself bizarrely forced into resigning over a minor security breach, adding to the out-and-out chaos already surrounding the Liz Truss government. Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe joins me now. Anne, I mean, look, as a Brexiteer and as someone who is very concerned about controlling our borders, I imagine you, like me, are despairing over this.
Oh, totally. And I mean, yes, she did something wrong, but it was the sort of thing that you could have apologised for and gone on. And I certainly don't see Grant Shapps taking the problems of, the Channel Tunnel, the Channel crossing seriously. I just don't see that happening. I'm just appalled. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to hear next. First of all, there's been all this speculation about the position of Prime Minister, and now, lo and behold, Home Secretary's gone. I mean, who next? Who's going next?
And what about, Anne, all of these developments in Westminster tonight with apparent blue-on-blue action in the chamber as the MPs were waiting to vote over the fracking bill and the U-turns, and now we hear the Chief Whip has unresigned. I mean, and can this go on? Can this even go on for another 24 hours? And I say this as someone like you who supported Truss.
No, this can't go on. She's either got to get a real grip on it, or something has got to happen. But I don't know what's got to happen, because I can't see an obvious replacement who's going to change everything and make everything okay again. So you may say she can't go on, but what is the option? I mean, that is the big question. And blue on blue now is regular. They're all attacking each other in the press. They're all attacking each other in the chamber. They're all attacking each other in the 1922 committee. They can't stop attacking each other. And it is unbelievable what is going on. This is a party that won the last general election with an 80-seat majority. And it's in total shambles. It's a circus. It's not a party. It's a circus.
And Anne, it also feels like there's a Ramona coup going on. I mean, Ben Riley-Smith, political editor at the Daily Telegraph, has just pointed out, if you look at the most senior positions in government now, 6 of the most senior cabinet ministers voted Remain. The Prime Minister Remain, Deputy Prime Minister Remain, Chancellor Remain, Home Secretary Remain, Foreign Secretary Leave, Defence Secretary Remain, Justice Secretary Remain. I mean, Brexit is now under threat, is it not, Anne?
Well, I think Brexit was always going to be under threat not in the sense of us going back formally into the EU, but I think it's always been a possibility that they would simply seek closer and closer relations with the EU. You've got Macron's political union, they're cuddling up to the European Defence Union. All the signs are there. So I don't think Brexit in the formal sense, that we would be part of the EU anytime soon. That's not under threat, but what is under threat is making Brexit meaningful. And, we've yet to see that happen. And I did have hopes that Liz Truss would make that happen.
Yeah, I don't see it happening now. Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the Remainer globalist coup is in full swing, with Liz Truss's premiership seemingly hanging by a thread. Small victories like a galvanising PMQs performance and successfully staving off a fracking rebellion have been overshadowed by the bombshell exits of Home Secretary Suella Braverman and reports of chaos inside the voting lobbies. Suddenly, this statement looks like it might come back to haunt her.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
So how could this happen in one of the world's greatest democracies? Spiked editor Tom Slater uncancelled and digging into Shapps and Hunt's anti-democratic rise to power at 10:40. And should Truss perform just one last U-turn and resign? I'll put that to my superstar panel next. Tonight, former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks and broadcaster Ashley James. I'll break down what's sure to be a damning round of newspaper front pages throughout the next hour too. Plus, is this the Tory party's nadir?
So you seem quietly...
I'm livid. And, I really shouldn't say this, but I hope all those people that put Liz Truss in number 10, I hope it was worth it.
And in the wake of such carnage, has Trussonomics killed off low taxes and libertarian policies for good? Sir John Redwood, one of the PM's closest allies for years, is my special guest at 10:20. And life in Montecito sounds like a right hoot.
What are you and your husband watching together?
So once we've gotten the kids to bed and I've played a little Wordle or done my 10 minutes of Duolingo.
Too much information yet again from the Duchess. They're breaking her silence as the Crown is slammed for its mistruths about the royal family. So are Harry and Meghan the biggest hypocrites to push ahead with their Netflix reality show? I'll bring you that and more in the middle of us at 10:30. I'll crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union Jackass 2 before the night is out. So do stay up with us. But before all of that, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. And what a day in Westminster. The former Transport Minister Grant Shapps has been made Home Secretary following Suella Braverman's surprise resignation this afternoon. And in a strongly worded resignation letter to the Prime Minister, Suella Braverman said she was resigning due to a mistake she had made earlier in the day when she'd sent an official document on migration policy from her personal email account, which she admitted broke the ministerial code. but being openly critical of the Prime Minister's policies. In the same letter, she also said she had serious concerns about the government's commitment to honouring manifesto pledges. In response, Liz Truss simply said she accepted the resignation, adding it was important the ministerial code was upheld and that cabinet confidentiality was respected. Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said the government is in chaos.
Well, I think the Conservative government seems to be just falling apart at the seams. To appoint and then sack both the Home Secretary and the Chancellor in the space of 6 weeks is totally chaotic. There's obviously been all sorts of disagreements as well as chaos and confusion, and it's just no way to run a government when home affairs, national security and our economy are much more important than this. It's not just a change of Home Secretary we need, it's a change of government.
Well, that's not all that happened in Westminster. This evening, MPs rejected Labour's motion to ban fracking. Conservatives had been told the motion was actually going to be treated as a confidence motion in Liz Truss. But the Labour MP, Chris Bryant, asked the Commons Deputy Speaker to investigate claims of members being physically manhandled and bullied into the lobby as the vote was taking place. And on top of that, Downing Street has confirmed that the Conservative Chief and Deputy Chief Whip will now stay on, following earlier reports that Wendy Wootton and Craig Whittaker may have resigned. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister was in the House of Commons today facing PMQs. And in so doing, she said she was completely committed to the triple lock on pensions. Liz Truss faced jeers from opposition MPs during PMQs as she said she was on the side of working people and promised to protect the most vulnerable. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, urged her to stand down, asking what the point was of a Prime Minister whose promises didn't even last a week.
The only mandate she's ever had is from members opposite. It was a mandate built on fantasy economics and it ended in disaster. The country's got nothing to show for it except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party. I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone.
Sir Keir Starmer. Well, in our other top story on GB News tonight, the deaths of 45 newborn babies could have been prevented, according to an inquiry which found serious failings at one of England's largest NHS trusts. After reviewing more than 200 cases dating back to 2009, experts concluded that poor care at East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust contributed to the babies' deaths. Some newborns were left with brain damage. The chief executive of East Kent Hospital's Tracy Fletcher admitted mistakes had been made and she apologised to the families affected. Now, charities are calling for benefits to be raised in line with inflation, which has returned to a 40-year high. Office for National Statistics figures show inflation rose to 10.1% in September. That's up from 9.9% on the previous month. Higher food prices were apparently responsible for the increase in inflation. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now part 2 of Dan Wootton Tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. First look at the front pages, and the Metro leads with good headline this: Sual of a mess, a reference to the Home Secretary's resignation today. Braverman said we have abandoned promises to voters. The Eye bemoans the chaos at the heart of the UK government after a day of, well, total chaos, which saw whips resign, then unresign, and Braverman savaging the PM after she was sacked. She's due to make a resignation speech tomorrow. My goodness, there's going to be fireworks there because her speech at the Tory party conference was brilliant, actually. My superstar panel back with me now. Former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Now, earlier today, it looked like Truss could maybe be staging some sort of very, very minor comeback, which might have given her at least a few more weeks in number 10. at Prime Minister's questions, despite what I'll admit was this clearly scripted zinger to keep things off from slippery Starmer.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently, it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
Now, Limp Liz, who I've actually been really worried about in terms of her mental health these past few days, displayed a bit of a fight back. Watch.
I am a fighter and not a quitter. I have acted in the national interest to make sure that we have economic stability. We will maintain the triple lock, and I am completely committed to it. So is the Chancellor. I have been in office for just under 2 months, and I have delivered the energy price guarantee. I've reversed the national insurance increase, and I've also taken steps, and we will be taking steps, to crack down on the militant unions.
But within just 3 hours of that, her sinking ship government was plunged into absolute chaos. The embattled PM pulled out of a factory visit where she was supposed to speak to journalists before the bombshell resignation of her Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Then the drama started to unfold some more. While the government won a crucial vote on fracking, sensational reports have been emerging tonight of MPs being, quote, physically manhandled and bullied into voting for the policy by the likes of Health Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister Theresa Coffey and Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg, something they both deny. In the midst of all of this, the Chief Whip, Wendy Morton, and the Deputy Chief Whip, Craig Whittaker, were said to be prepping their resignations, though Downing Street have now confirmed they are staying, mere minutes after some MPs admitted they had no idea who was in charge. All of this omni-shambles and chaos has resulted in an extraordinary intervention from the well-respected backbencher Charles Walker. Watch.
So you seem quietly...
I'm livid. And, you know, I really shouldn't say this, but I hope all those people that put Liz Truss in number 10, I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it for the ministerial red box. I hope it was worth it to sit round the cabinet table, because the damage they have done to our party is extraordinary. And I know I speak for hundreds of backbenchers who right now are worrying for their constituents all the time, but now worrying about their own personal circumstances, because there is nothing as an ex-MP. And a lot of my colleagues are wondering, as many of their constituents are wondering, how they're going to pay their mortgages if this all comes to an end soon.
Meanwhile, his fellow Tory MP, Sir Desmond Swayne, another great guy, simply tweeted, "I'm waiting for the moment in Dallas when Bobby Ewing walks out of the shower and says, it's all just been a bad dream." So look, Dawn, Liz Truss said she's a fighter, not a quitter, but, and I say this, I asked this question as someone who even a week ago would have said absolutely not, Truss has to stay for the good of the country. But do you think now, actually, the ultimate U-turn might have to be her falling on her sword as early as tomorrow?
I think she has to. The question then is, who takes her place?
And that's what's most terrifying.
And that's what I can't even begin to work out. I can't see where that party goes that's going to please the Conservative Party members and, more importantly, us out here. And the one thing at the moment, you wanted, you know, Boris going and then strong and stable leadership. And we don't have that, Dan. And I think we're all worried about what's going on in our lives at the moment, you know, with the cost of living crisis, which we go on about ad nauseum. And they're still fighting like rats in a sack. And that's doing a huge disservice to rats, by the way, and probably sacks as well. Because if they're not thinking about what we're going for, they don't care about us anymore. They're so interested in their own little squabbles. And this isn't even political, because I just think Labour at the moment, I mean, sort of like... Keir Starmer was actually mildly amusing in PMQs today. As you say, very incredibly well scripted, but I thought the, you know, out by Christmas line was actually quite good for Keir Starmer, come on. But I think Labour now, it's an open goal for them, and if there is a general election, and it is possible, I guess, if there is a general election, and Labour are 38 points ahead, I think, at one point they were today, Keir Starmer gets in. But at the moment, Labour have got this little veneer of being united, but they're as divided as the Conservative
Party. They will be
party.
exposed. They will be well and truly exposed. But Adam Brooks, I think there's a real concern if Truss goes, because what it's saying to the establishment, to the blob, to the Ramonas,
They've won.
especially to the MSM. Yeah, they've won, but they won with Boris, Adam. What it's saying is that they are in control.
Yeah.
And they can do this time and again with any Prime Minister they want.
I don't want her to resign because, as you say, it does show that the outside forces are in control. As Dawn says, who takes over? They all petrify me, to be fair. I've made it clear about Hunt. I'd rather Starmer. He is such a bad option.
But it's Sunak who they really want, Adam.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest about this. There are a whole load of sore losers, including the Wets within the party, who could never accept that the party membership turned against Sunak. And they have been out to get Truss. So I am furious with Liz Truss because actually she did this to herself by U-turning. It was so obvious. I said it in that digest.
Again, bad advisors.
The moment she U-turned, it was over.
Whoever is advising her is absolutely killing her, to be fair.
But you don't think she should resign?
I don't. I'll tell you why I don't want to see her resign. Is because I want to see every move that these schemers and these plotters have. It's coming to the end of the coup. I want to see what they've got left, because I want them to expose themselves. I think, she will go, but I want her to go out, showing the big picture. What else have they got in their armoury to make her resign? I want to see them having to resign, them having to do...
And we need to know, as Nigel Farage said to me in the last hour, we need to know who is making these decisions, who is advising Jeremy Hunt. As Nigel said, is it the IMF? Is it the White House? This is also important. Ashley James, look, I know you sit here on this panel and you're the person who tends to represent the left here. But I just wonder, are you concerned about how anti-democratic this has become, Ashley? Because the thing is, right, with the Tory party, and it's the same with the Labour Party, they have a process as to how they elect their leaders. And both parties made, I think, the very wise decision to say that it's down to the members to make the final say, to have the final say. And what I feel is going on is a bid to, with Boris, overturn the mandate of the entire population, but with Truss to overturn the mandate of the Conservative Party, and it just feels so anti-democratic to me.
I completely agree, and look, I wanted Boris out, but I also didn't want this leadership contest. I still think that they shouldn't have had a holiday over summer. I think what they are failing to understand is the people in our country, including all of us, are concerned, and we need reassurance and we need stability, and instead it's like watching musical statues. We don't even know who's going to be in the cabinet next week.
But do you think she was ever given a chance for stability?
I think the problem is she came in, and I sat here on the sofa and I said the first PMQs, I was actually quite impressed with her. She has done this to herself because she's U-turned, because she hasn't... with the mini-budget, by throwing Kwesi Kwarteng under the bus for, by the way, something that she wanted. So if he's gone, she should go too. And I don't want another Tory leadership debate. I think the whole contest was a complete farce, watching them tear each other apart when they should be focusing on us.
But what do you think should happen now, genuinely?
Honestly, I don't know. And last week I said I didn't want a general election because I want focus to be on us, people. Now, I don't see how this is going to go away. I feel like she has no... Tory members don't believe in her anymore. Her MPs don't believe in her anymore. The electorate, they're voting on things like the manifesto is completely ripped up. I do feel like the only way to reset at this point is a general election. And by the way, I don't care at the moment what colour party is in power, but I want people to actually start focusing on us and remember what their job is instead of all indulging in these insular psychodramas, because I frankly find it insulting. And to be honest, even in PMQs today, on both sides, all the jeering and the laughing, this isn't a joke. We have been asking for assurance and stability, and I'm putting Labour in the same bracket. If it was a school, they'd all be in detention, and I think they make a laughing stock of us. And
But I don't think they ever gave Liz Truss a chance, though. And that's the issue.
But she also did it to herself, and she U-turned, and nobody made her U-turn.
You should give her a chance. You should give a new Prime Minister a chance.
But I think people did. I sat here and I said I was quite impressed with her on the first PMQs, and I also enjoyed seeing the debate between Keir and Liz, which I don't feel we got with Boris. And now, yet again, because of their own... It's the Conservatives' own undoing. They're all arguing with each other.
I just wish she'd been stronger.
They've hit the self-destruct button, Dan.
They have.
That's
and
what's
I agree, a
happened.
lot of that is down to her, absolutely. Now, Suella Braverman's final act as Home Secretary was to introduce the Public Order Bill as she set about finally clamping down on disruptive protesters. Now, here's a reminder of some of the chaotic scenes by these eco-extremist protests in the last week. Goodness gracious me. Will Garlic Chaps really be as strong on cracking down on some of those idiots? Well, look, I have my doubts. Ashley James, Adam Brooks, Dawn Neeson, do stand by, because coming up, as the Crown is slammed for its mistruths about the royal family, Harry and Meghan, the biggest hypocrites to push ahead with their Netflix reality show. My Superstar panel will return for that and more, I imagine, damning front pages for Liz Truss. That's as the media buzz continues at 10:30. But next, has Truss Economics killed off low taxes and libertarian economic policies for good? Well, Sir John Redwood, one of the PM's closest allies for years, will break his silence. He's live straight after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. When ex-Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's revolutionary mini-budget was announced, many in the party and beyond celebrated the first truly conservative budget in a generation. But now that Liz Truss has blown up her flagship economic policy to appease the Tory wets, there are fears that the failure of Truss Economics has killed off low taxes and other libertarian economic policies for good. Well, former Conservative Minister, current MP, Sir John Redwood, who worked under Margaret Thatcher and has been one of Liz Truss's closest allies for years, joins me live. And John, I know there's so much noise, obviously, around all week, But one of the most important things I think about the failure of the mini budget and the so-called death of Trussonomics is that it seems to mean that Treasury Orthodoxy, something that I know you have been speaking out against for some time, could be here to stay for another generation.
I don't think I agree with all of that. I mean, first of all, I haven't been a close ally of Liz Truss's over the years. I supported her in the leadership campaigns. I liked what she was saying.
She likes you, though,
she
John.
wished to see.
But, John, she likes you, and she has been very clear to many people who I know that she considers you someone who she listens to on the economic front.
Well, that's lovely, and I have always liked her economic views. I'm just saying we weren't close pals over the years, but I've supported her leadership campaign, and I thought what she said made a lot of sense. I think it was a great pity that, for one reason or another, Kwasi launched a third of a budget. He told us about tax changes, but because there hadn't been time to do all the preparation for one reason or another, he didn't do the spending. He therefore wasn't able to tell us about the borrowing consequences, and he wasn't able to complete the package of necessary reforms to speed the growth rate. And it would have clearly been better if they'd done the whole thing as a rounded package, which is what I wanted them to do, and they now agree that they should have done the whole thing as a rounded package, and we await the complete package under the new Chancellor at the end of this month. I don't agree with you that this kills off the idea of lower taxes. The idea of lower taxes is popular and powerful, and it's right for certain economic circumstances. I would urge them to look again at some of their tax rates, because I think they are too high, and I think you need lower tax rates as part of a good growth strategy. And we are at that very important point at the moment where inflation is too high, and yes, policy has to address high inflation, but the coming threat is recession, and recession will clearly purge the inflation completely. But if you overdo the forces of recession, you get worse evils. You get higher unemployment, collapsing incomes, and instead of controlling the deficit and the borrowing, which is what they say they want to do, you'll end up with more borrowing. You'll have forced borrowing because in a recession, your tax revenues fall away. As people earn less money, fewer people in jobs, companies make less profits, less is spent for VAT, and your public expenditures go up because you have more people on benefits and more costs of collapse and disaster. So I am urging them to challenge those in the Treasury and OBR who seem to think that there must be a very sharp tightening in economic policy today, taking the form of both higher taxes and lower spending. Because I think this is exactly the wrong point in the cycle. And if they, by their Treasury orthodoxy, create a long and deep recession, they will end up forcing us to borrow a lot more, not a lot less.
But that's what's going to happen, isn't it? But isn't the issue, John, that as a result of these mistakes, there has now been an absolute return to the power of Treasury orthodoxy? I mean, look at the people who Jeremy Hunt, the new Chancellor, has appointed on this almost sage-like economic advisory group. You know, they are people who absolutely represent Treasury orthodoxy.
Well, that may be right. And I and others will obviously be saying other things to Jeremy Hunt. And I will make my advice very clear through your programme, through my website and all my usual ways of doing that. And I am pleading with them now to understand we have to fight recession as well as fighting inflation, and that the OBR model is not really dynamic enough. It doesn't seem to take into account the fact that if you correct the deficit too quickly with tax rises, you end up with a bigger deficit and more borrowing because of the impact that has on economic activity. This economy, like several in the West, has just been badly hit by what is effectively a massive tax rise, and that is the huge increase in energy. And it is literally a tax rise because a lot of that extra energy cost takes the form of tax revenues that are collected by Qatar or by Russia or by the other suppliers of the energy that we import. And so they're taking money off us, which we can no longer spend on creating prosperity and jobs, and giving it to the tax revenues of other countries. So it's very bad news. That has to be offset. Now, the government knows it has to be offset, so it's come up with a plan to provide some supplements for people facing very big energy bills. But I think it needed to do a bit more, and that's why I supported the original Truss proposals on specific tax changes. I also think in this very competitive world where quite a few economies are going into recession because they're all being hit in the same way, we need to be super competitive. We need to be very attractive, because if we're going to attract and keep the footloose international companies here, we need lower tax rates to attract them. And if we're going to allow the companies already here to invest in all that extra capacity and new jobs, which is what growth is all about, again, we need to tax them less so they have more of their own money to spend. Because growth sounds a bit techie and economic talk. But what is it about? It is about individuals having the chance of a better job. More people are unemployed, having the chance of any kind of job. It's about small businesses being able to expand and have the money to invest. It is about our country growing more of its own food, making more of its own goods, and producing more of its own energy. That is the way you make people better off. You give them more choices. You give them a better lifestyle. That's what I believe in. That's what Liz believes in. And we don't want that swamped by people who wrongly tell us that now is the time for big tax rises and public spending cuts. They've been wrong in the past, and very often it's based on wrong forecasts. 2 years running, the OBR greatly exaggerated the amount we would have to borrow, and I remember calling them out for being wrong. This year, I thought they underestimated it. Unfortunately, I'm going to be right again, because their next forecast is clearly going to be quite a lot higher than their original one. But they shouldn't overcorrect and then produce such a high forecast for the deficit that it forces the Chancellor into tax rises that we don't want and would be damaging.
Indeed. Look, absolutely fascinating listening to you, Sir John Redwood. I really wish Truss and Kwarteng had taken your advice for a more well-rounded plan, because maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. But thank you so much for being here tonight, Sir John Redwood. Now, coming up, why is a globalist Ramona coup being allowed to happen in one of the world's greatest democracies? Spiked editor Tom Slater uncancelled on that at 10:40. But first, are Harry and Meghan hypocrites for going ahead with their Netflix reality series as the upcoming series of The Crown spreads total mistruths about the royal family? My superstar panel return for the media buzz, and we're going to have more, I imagine, brutal front pages on the Truss tailspin. That's in just 2 minutes' time.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Time to return to tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. Oh my goodness. Hope Liz Truss isn't looking at these front pages. They're bad. The Guardian. Braverman's bombshell puts Truss on the brink is their headline as the Home Secretary sacking has put Truss at risk of a mass exodus of ministers. The Independent also leads with Braverman's attack on the PM after her sacking today. Plus, it runs accusations of MPs manhandling hesitant colleagues before the fracking vote tonight. Broken is the damning one-word banner Sun headline after a day of unprecedented chaos, piled pressure on the PM. They say their Liz Truss's authority is in tatters after a day of extraordinary mayhem. The broken PM was heckled by her MPs as she left the Commons last night, with supporters calling time on her premiership. And on the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson's going to love this one. Lettuce Liz is cut to shreds. That's, of course, in reference to their lettuce cam, which is documenting whether the vegetable can outlive the Prime Minister. So let's go live now. Dawn Neeson on our superstar panel, giving you are the former editor of the Daily Star, current columnist. Can you give us some live running commentary, Dawn? Who's faring better here? The Truss or the lettuce?
Well, I can reveal a little tiny weeny exclusive here, behind the scenes action, that occasionally the lettuce gets into a fridge. Now, to be fair, the Tories have previous for this. Boris Johnson notoriously hid in the fridge as well. So we can't blame...
It's a fix!
We can't blame the lettuce for doing similar. But the lettuce is doing OK. It's doing better than Liz. It has to be
my
fair.
goodness me. Dawn Neeson, if you were still editing the Daily Star, would you give the person who came up with lettuce Liz a pay rise? Because this has been the best publicity the Star's had
It's
in
an
years.
incredibly good idea, and I'd give them a pay rise because it would have been me coming up with the idea.
Dawn's here tonight alongside Adam Brooks and Ashley James, of course, as well. Now, predictably, Meghan Markle's back on publicity overdrive less than 6 weeks after the late Queen's death. In an interview to Variety magazine, with a picture on their front cover that looks like she thinks she's ready to run for president or something. And if you need proof that Meghan's acting days are a thing of the past, just listen to her bizarre babbling when she was asked by the Hollywood Bible to answer a very simple question about what her and Harry are watching on television.
What are you and your husband watching together?
So once we've gotten the kids to bed and I've played a little Wordle or done my 10 minutes of Duolingo, I really wanted to relearn French. I had studied it for the 4 years in high school, and then it just went away. So after those two things, if we do turn on the TV, which is fairly rare, I think we're like most people where you just do endless searching until you get so tired of searching you don't watch anything. No, but there are a couple, I mean, there's some incredible shows on at the moment, and I think really watching great storytelling, there's nothing like it. So I would say White Lotus was a pretty good example of that.
She really didn't want to answer that question, did she? But Meghan is still pressing ahead with the Sussexes' bombshell reality series to be released with Netflix in December. Now, that's despite the streaming giant throwing disgusting smears at the royal family in its upcoming series of The Crown. Due to air next month, the new season will dramatise the lurid details of the divorce between Harry's parents, while also spreading downright lies like King Charles hinting at the late Queen's abdication, with former PM John Major, as well as the late Prince Philip pursuing an affair. Now, none of that seems to bother their Hollywood Highnesses Harry and Meghan, though, who have readily accepted the Netflix pound and perhaps expecting trouble. Meghan is beginning to roll out excuses for their sordid reality show, telling Variety, "It's nice to be able to trust someone with our story, a seasoned director whose work I've long admired, even if it means it may not be the way we would have told it, but that's not why we're telling it. We're trusting our story to someone else, and that means it will go through their lens." Yeah, right. As if we know it will be given the full Hutchwell treatment, so they are presented exactly as they want to be seen. But Adam Brooks, this is fascinating because tonight on the front page of The Sun here, Judi Dench, the Oscar winner, has become the latest major name to blast the new series of The Crown as cruelly unjust. And isn't this highly hypocritical? Because it's not like Harry and Meghan sit back any other time someone criticises their family. They love slamming the tabloid press, for example, but when it's Netflix, putting out blatant untruths because they want the big bucks. They're prepared to ignore it.
Money talks, Dan. And they've proven, you know, this is the couple that said they was leaving the UK to pursue privacy. But they've taken tens of millions of pounds to plaster themselves on anything and everything, you know. So, look, we know they're hypocrites. Everyone knows they're hypocrites. And one thing that worries me is that I think Harry sort of held back with certain things because he didn't want to, upset his nan. He didn't want to sort of upset the apple cart there. Now she's not there. I don't think they're going to hold back with what happens. So
they don't give a damn about bringing down the rest of the royal family. I mean, actually, look, I want to talk to you about reality TV because, of course, you wouldn't be here probably on this sofa if it wasn't for reality TV. And actually, I'm not a snob at all. I love reality television. I think lots of great people who I know and who have become household names get there through reality television. So I'm not a snob about that. What I'm furious about, actually, is their rank hypocrisy. How on earth, as Adam says, can they claim privacy and then go and reveal all of their lives to anyone who watches on Netflix? It doesn't make sense, does it?
I think it's much more controlled. Look, I actually don't care about Harry and Meghan either way. They don't live rent-free in my head like they live in yours. I don't think about them at all. I don't talk about them at all until I'm here. So I feel like I'm in a position where I need to defend them. But actually, as long as they're making their own money, which they are, they're no longer part of the taxpayer. I don't really care what they do.
So you don't care about what damage they do to the royal family?
Well, I think they're allowed to tell their truth and their story.
Their version of the truth.
But what I will say is...
What do you mean by that? There's not... No, I've got to interrupt there, because what do you mean by their truth? There is the truth. And they don't tell the truth.
They weren't happy with the fact that they felt like they couldn't share their story or they felt betrayed. And look, I don't really listen... Well, I've never listened to Meghan's podcast, but naturally she's going to talk about things from her perspective. Do I think that they are well advised? Not particularly, no. But ultimately, this is Harry's mum and dad. So, you know, I'm sure he has feelings about Netflix. Will I watch their reality show? Probably not. I hope that they have good control over it, because as someone who has done reality TV, it's not about you, it's about the entertainment, and sometimes there can be a lot in the edit. I love reality TV. Well, I hope they do have control.
The editors of Made in Chelsea, but they are the bosses, so they do get to control the edit. And Dawn Neeson, by all accounts, they're already begging and pleading to have lots of stuff taken out because they look so terrible putting this show out to the world just after the Queen's death. And you know what they're going to do, Dawn. You know what they're going to do. You know who they're going to blame. You know who they're going to smear. It's you and me. What they want is to put out a biased documentary slagging off the British media, and I'm told that's going to be their biggest target.
Well, of course it is. I mean, because it's a safe target. I mean, you go on about the mainstream media as well, Dan. You have a go at us. I mean, we are the mainstream media. But, I mean, the thing is with Harry and Meghan, it's like, you know, Netflix are making a drama, OK? It's like having a go at a soap opera. I don't care about The Crown. I've never watched The Crown. I don't care. I'm not going to get my nicks in a twist about it. Harry and Meghan, on the other hand, their entire career now is slagging off the royal family, so of course they're hypocritical. But, I mean, they're actually doing far worse than The Crown and Netflix are doing, because Harry and Meghan are telling their version of the truth, lying, basically, about what's going on. So
but you must see the irony. You must see the irony that you've got Prince William, who has moved heaven and earth to expose the BBC for what they did
to
of course,
the Panorama
the Martin Bashir Panorama. And then you've got Prince Harry in cahoots with a company who's going to make an entire episode of entertainment out of that same interview. It's hypocritical.
Of course it's hypocritical, but Harry's entire career now, the Ginger Whinger, is actually based on slagging his dad off, Camilla off, his brother and Kate off. That is his career. Whether Netflix were doing this or not is neither here nor there. Harry, and it's not even Meghan, I don't give a monkeys, I'm with Ashton, I don't give a monkeys what Meghan does. But Harry is the one that's responsible here. He's a grown man, allegedly. And he would do this as a career.
He's a man-child.
Yeah.
He will do what she wants.
I think they're just so... No, that's not fair.
Stop with the Yoko Ono thing. I mean,
he will do what she wants.
He's a grown adult. And also, when you look back at all of his history, he's always been hypercritical. Basically, he needs therapy because he hasn't learnt to deal with what happened to his mum, which was very tragic. But I'm so bored of hearing that it's Meghan's fault,
Do you know what's going to shock you all here? I'm with Ashley on this. Not with Adam.
What?
Because Adam,
Stop.
I covered...
I'm shocked.
Stop right now.
Because
this is not in my contract.
I covered these two very closely over many years, right? And Harry is just as responsible for all of the terrible decisions that they make. I do think, though, Meghan has played on that emotional vulnerability and has been very manipulating. But Ashley's right. He's always...
He also knew what the royal family was about and what the institution was about, so you could argue that maybe he didn't protect her. What I do think is, regardless of their truth or anything, they are badly advised. Like, I don't think they've gone about it in the right way, but like I said earlier, I don't think about them at all. And as long as they're not taking money from the public purse, I don't care.
I don't think many people are now, because that awful little podcast that she does is absolutely tanking on Spotify, despite having more publicity than any podcast in the world. It's been absolutely thrashed by Joe Rogan on a weekly basis, and I think it will continue to do so. By the way, from one set of laughable Netflix characters to another, or in a serious flashback to the early 2000s, the Teletubbies are back and looking as bright as cheerful as ever in the new trailer released by the streaming service. But has the favourite kids series just gone woke? Watch.
Over the hills and far away, Teletubbies come to play. Tinky Winky, Dipsy, Lala, Ho, Teletubbies, say hello, Teletubbies!
Now, while many fans have praised the return of the nonsensical characters that left adults baffled back in the 90s, others have taken to social media to complain about the change to the beloved son, with some even calling the decision to introduce diverse babies as yet another example of woke culture in action. But it seems the most major issue former fans are having are the visual effects, which many feel pale in comparison to the original. I'll let you judge when Tinky Winky, Dipsy, Lala and Poe return to Netflix on the 14th of November.
Do you like Tinky Winky
I
then?
can't believe we're offended by a son now. Come on, the original son is like, she's probably my age. Of course they need a new son.
I'm a big Teletubbies fan.
Who's your favourite? Go on, is it Tinky Winky?
Is Tinky Winky the new one?
I'm not sure.
The one with the little handbag?
I'm not sure.
No, wasn't that...
Or is that Poe?
I'm not an expert. I couldn't tell you, to be fair.
youngest one.
One of them's a little gay one with a handbag. So I guess they've always been quite woke,
Just
haven't they?
because it was carrying a handbag doesn't mean it's gay.
Don't misgender them.
Dawn needs some. Oh God, I've just made some faux pas. Have I just outed Tinky Winky? I think this is known. I can't remember which one it is. Anyway.
They've been woke all along.
Yes, they have. Coming up, let's move on. The power back in my hot little hands. I'll be crowning today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass very shortly. But first, why is a coup being allowed to happen in one of the world's greatest democracies? Spiked editor Tom Slater takes down the Hunt and Shapps takeover in uncancelled Mayor Seconds Way right after we take a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as Liz Truss grapples to save her premiership in the wake of Suella Braverman's explosive exit, I'll bring you the best analysis of the Tory turbulence with the country's top newsmakers and political A-listers. Plus, he's the man whose bombshell book shone a light on the cracks in the Windsor family and exposed Meghan as a narcissistic sociopath in the eyes of palace staff. Now Valentine Lowe reveals whether the royal truce is holding 1 month after the Queen's funeral. And as ever, there's full-throttled opinion from my superstar panel, Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nicol. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, it's been another day from hell for Liz Truss, with Home Secretary Suella Braverman's bombshell resignation followed by a shambolic fracking vote which saw disputed claims of MPs reportedly being bullied and manhandled into voting the government's way. The political chaos began, of course, with the catastrophic mini-budget U-turn earlier this week and the installation of globalist lockdown lover Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. As my next guest, Spiked editor Tom Slater writes, who elected PM Hunt? In just a few days, he has fundamentally altered the UK's economic course, taking his lead not from voters but from markets and meddlesome bodies like the IMF. What's weirder still is that Truss, with her authority completely drained from her and without even the pretence of political principle left, essentially invited him in to stage this hostile takeover of her own government. And Tom Slater, since you wrote that piece, the Ramona coup continues, of course, because Braverman is out on some sort of minor indiscretion, replaced by Grant Shapps. How is this happening, Tom, in one of the world's greatest democracies?
I think it should alarm anyone who cares about democracy. It doesn't matter how you care about this government, doesn't matter what you think about the Tory party. We shouldn't be in a situation in which Jeremy Hunt, a man who precisely no one voted for to be Prime Minister, is running the country. And as you say, as we saw today, this sort of coup has deepened. You've got Grant Shapps, who's been given this particular position, a Rishi Sunak backer, you know, someone who Liz Truss sacked a few weeks ago from his previous cabinet position, has been given one of the great offices of state. And I thought it was interesting when he was speaking to the news cameras in Westminster, he thanked Jeremy Hunt, didn't even mention Liz Truss. Jeremy Hunt is essentially currently in control. And what I think we're witnessing is like a weird replay of what happened in places like Italy and Greece in the debt crisis. We just have a kind of technocratic government impose itself. Yes, it's filling a vacuum left by Liz Truss and her shredded authority and all the rest of it. But we can't let this situation go on. We really need to, I think, have a general election just to bring this back in line with what voters want.
Yeah, because Tom, as Nigel Farage said to me earlier in the evening, how the hell do we know who Hunt is being advised by? You know, is it the IMF, who you mentioned in your piece? Farage suggested, could it be the White House? I mean, this is so anti-democratic, right?
Completely. It's the reassertion of technocracy. It's the sort of revenge of the old orthodoxies and things like this. I mean, the reason Jeremy Hunt is in that position is because he'll do what he's told by the elite consensus, by the markets, by bodies like the IMF, which have decided that the government has strayed too far in one direction and basically needs to be brought to heel. And this is one of the things that was so positive about Brexit, and we're at risk of really losing in the midst of this Remainer coup, is that, you know, we broke out of that old kind of there is no alternative sort of politics where there could be a bit more experimentation. Now you see that old orthodoxy just reinforced once again, which is why it's not just about Jeremy Hunt, it's about what he represents, which I think is so damning and something that we really need to take head on.
Well, of course. And Tom, there's also his authoritarian tendencies, which no one in the MSM points out. He's presented as some sort of almost quite beige figure, as if he's a safe pair of hands. And I actually think Hunt proved during the COVID crisis he's actually an extremist. Tom, he wanted to follow the Chinese-style zero COVID policy where Brits who would test positive for COVID would be locked up in a government facility away from their homes. Plus, when it comes to Brexit, he wanted a second referendum, which would mean overturning the biggest democratic mandate in our history. How is he presented by the MSM as some sort of safe pair of hands? To me, they are extremist policies, and he should be called out as the extremist that he is.
Definitely. And I think Jeremy Hunt is a good example of how a man who kind of believes in nothing is quite a dangerous thing, because he has taken very outrageous positions, but he also is just willing to kind of go whichever way the wind blows. He's very given to whatever the experts are telling him at any one point. But as we learned during Brexit and the pandemic, the experts can be very wrong. I think he's a good example of how an empty suit, as it were, a kind of technocratic politician who claims just to be someone who's sensible, knows how to manage things, can easily be captured by some of the most authoritarian and dangerous ideologies out there. And I think lockdown is definitely the one that we really should hang around his neck, given the kind of positions that he has taken on that particular issue.
Indeed. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Thank you so much, Tom. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. My superstar panel return now. Dawn Neeson, your nominee for today's greatest Briton.
Liz the Lettuce. It's the Daily Star Lettuce, who is actually doing a better job than Liz Truss.
Oh, my goodness, can we go? Can we go to the live stream? Is it still surviving? Is it still outlasting Liz? Yes.
Yep.
But
looking slightly limp, but I mean...
exclusive revelation that it's been spending some time in the fridge might make people question whether this is actually a fair fight, Dawn Newsom. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
Mine is Conservative MP Ben Bradley for his truth bomb tweet that basically sums up the Tory party antics over the last few months.
So he tweeted, well, that effectively renders all of the political fallout, criticism, dive in the polls, etc. of the last few weeks entirely pointless, doesn't it? Right back where we started, just far less popular than before. And I think it was a very fair point. He's a good guy. Ashley James, your nominee.
Mine is Keir Starmer. I thought he did a brilliant job at PMQs today, even bringing some humour into it and obviously reading out all of Truss's
Yeah, should we have a little look at that moment?
I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone.
Oh, look, even I have to admit that was a good moment. Can't believe I'm saying that. But the winner, of course, it's the Daily Star's lettuce. Dawn Newsom. I'm not just doing it because you're a former Daily Star editor and a current columnist, but, yeah, genius moment.
Good idea.
Union Jackass time. Dawn Newsom, your nominee.
I'm going for the real-life lettuce, Liz Truss, I'm afraid. Where do I even
Give her
start?
a break, Dawn!
Where do I even start? You know, the worst thing she did, Dan, was throwing Kwasi Kwarteng under the bus. All he did was follow out her orders.
Yeah, no, that was bad. That was bad. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
My nominee today is Michael Gove for the scheming snake that he is, and I believe the country is in a bad place and he has tanked the Conservative Party with his scheming and sort of backroom antics.
And Ashley James, your Union Jackass nominee.
I mean, I can't keep up with politics, so mine's basically out of date. It was Suella Braverman. Obviously, the government are now spending another £20 million on Rwanda, which still hasn't actually deported anyone. It's just a total colossal waste of money.
Oh, they probably won't now. They'll probably give up now, won't they?
I'll go. I'll go now.
Maybe she can go.
Well, look, I'm going to go for Michael Gove because actually it was snaky behaviour from folk like Gove and Shapps, who is our new Home Secretary, that rendered the chance of Liz Truss actually having any success in the early days of her premiership pretty much hopeless. Dawn Newsom, Adam Brooks, Ashley James, my fabulous superstar panel. Goodness me, I'm back again tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Will Liz Truss still be Prime Minister? Should she still be Prime Minister? Goodness me, my head is in my hands. Back tomorrow from 9. Be with us. Headliners next, though. Good night.
Good evening. I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. Tomorrow we switch things around a bit. It should be a brighter day across the west, where we've seen a fair bit of rain today, and we'll see more rain across the eastern areas. Still, it's going to be mild. Tomorrow, though, it won't be as windy as today. The isobars squeezing together. It's been very blustery across North and West Wales. Gusty winds too for Northern Ireland, where we've also seen some very heavy rain, and still further pulses of heavy rain to come tonight across Northern Ireland. May turn drier for a time before more rain spreads north. Same goes for northern parts of Wales. Further rain to come here, and that'll spread into northwest England and parts of southern Scotland by the morning time. Further south, it generally turns dry, but quite misty, quite murky, and very mild. Temperatures staying in double digits across the board. Very grey start then to come on Thursday morning. A lot of clouds, some misty conditions as well. Now, it should brighten up for Northern Ireland and Wales and southwest England, so a cheerier day compared to today. But notice further east, there will be outbreaks of rain across southeast